Hi, welcome to Rivetea. Welcome back if you've been here before. I'm Long Hair Linda, and today we are going to be talking about The Real Housewives of New Jersey, Season 13, Episode 3, and this one is called Boys Will Be Boys. So let's get into it. So we open up with the fight between Melissa and Teresa at Danielle's mozzarella making party, and Teresa says to Melissa that she felt like she wasn't rooting for her and Louie. Melissa thinks that nobody opened their arms to Louie more than they did, being her and Joe, and she wants to see Teresa happy always. Teresa says she feels that from her and randomly says she would love for Melissa to be a bridesmaid in her wedding. Melissa doesn't want to go back, saying it would be like going back to an ex-boyfriend, but they still make up, so good, I guess. Melissa says she is good with it all and they hug, and Teresa tells her that she loves her. I am so confused because I know in real time this feud is forever ongoing, and I'm just watching this all happen like, alright, well, you'll be fighting again in 5 minutes. Clearly. It's clearly not done, even though everyone and their mother wants it to be. At Dolores's, Paul is over and we find out that Paul calls Frank Mr. Potato Head, after we get a flashback from the reunion when Frank said Paul looks like Buzz Lightyear. A photographer shows up and it turns out that Dolores is having some kind of Easter themed photo shoot with Frank as the star. More on that in a moment. Frank arrives and after some banter with him invites Paul to a guys' night. Frank tells us that he and Paul didn't get off on the right foot, but he wants Paul to spend more time with him so that he can realise that Frank is not a threat and the family can go back to how it used to be. You mean with Dolores doing everything for you and acting like you're basically still married, Frank? Okay. Paul pulls a power move, saying he was expecting Frank to have pulled him aside to talk about their family and the regimens they have. But when Frank says Dolores was his conduit, so he would just speak to Paul through Dolores, I guess, Paul responds that he can't ask Dolores to do a man's job, that she doesn't need it, and that he has her now. Now, I kind of like Paulie. Bit old-fashioned for me, but I do like that sort of traditional thing, I guess. And it looks like that he speaks his mind and seems to have a lot of respect for Dolores, so I'm not mad at him. Anyway, Dolores wants to get to the shoot and Frank... Listen, I don't know what to say about this outfit that Frank's got on and the poses that he chose, honestly, so I don't know. Margaret, Jackie and Melissa are meeting for drinks and their obligatory chat about the other ladies and not showing anything real about their own lives. That's specific to Margaret, by the way, and also my sister-in-law, Melissa. Not Jackie so much, she has shared some real things. Jackie says therapy is really helping her to get rid of some toxic food habits, and I'm really happy for her. All jokes aside, I don't love her as a castmate, but I am extremely proud of the journey that she's been on to recover from, eating disorder stuff, and the fact that she shared it as well. She was very, very vulnerable. And, this is an extreme thing to go through to try and overcome. So she did that and shared it with viewers so that people that could relate to her could also seek help potentially or see that she was strong enough to do it and gain some inspiration. So for that, I really enjoy Jackie's presence on the show. That's all I'll say. Jackie says she met Danielle 2 times, so she's confused about not getting an invite to the cheese making party. Well, maybe the first reason is because you're calling it a cheese making party and not mozzarella making party. You're just taking all the fun out of it, Jackie. Margaret and Melissa tell her what Danielle said was her reason for excluding Jackie, that she looked her up and down, and Jackie said she doesn't do that to anybody, but she did look her up and down, makes total sense, because her outfit was a train wreck top to bottom. It looked like she took her shorts out of the hamper and put them on. Jackie says Danielle should have just called her like an adult, but when Margaret asks if she will tell Danielle that her outfit was bad, Jackie says she feels like Danielle's wardrobe is punishment enough. Like a real adult. Margaret wants to turn this very adult and not at all childish, bully-like conversation to Jennifer Aiden. Margaret claims Jennifer is on a downward spiral because she was trying to have an adult conversation with her about why she thought their making up was disingenuous. I'm very disappointed that Merriam-Webster didn't hop in here to let Margaret know that the word that she was looking for is disingenuous. But I digress. Margaret goes on to say that Jennifer Aiden gets very emotional whenever she says something, and Melissa adds that she seems very weak. She sees something very weak in Jennifer. Probably why you guys target her, especially Margaret, in my opinion. Margaret goes on to say that she almost felt bad, yeah, right? And Melissa says she did feel bad because something isn't right. What's extremely frustrating and annoying to me watching this is if they really genuinely did believe that, then it makes what they're doing so much worse. So much worse. Picking on somebody when they're supposedly down is reprehensible enough. But if they're down after a fallout that came about because you revealed an affair that her husband had on her on national television, is evil, in my opinion. It's giving evil. It's giving targeting somebody, going after them, and not letting up. Rachel and her husband are taking their 2-year-old daughter to a photo shoot, and Rachel asks her husband, John, if he wants to have another baby. A shocked John responds that he just had one like 3 months ago, and Rachel yells, you just had one? Men. Rachel tells us in her confessional that the year they got married, she got pregnant right away, but after her miscarriage, was unable to get pregnant naturally again and had to go through IVF. Rachel wants to use one of the 5 embryos that they have left in the freezer to have one more baby, but John wants to wait another year. Rachel pushes the issue, but John says he needs some time. Rachel says the clock is ticking. That lady is determined. So, John, go ahead and just give in. Just go ahead and give in now, because she's not going to stop. At Teresa's, Gia offers her mum some salad, and Teresa says no, she wants to lose 10 more pounds before the wedding. Gia's like, it's salad? As Louie walks in, Teresa fills Gia in on the drama with Melissa about the engagement party seating that came up at Danielle's mozzarella making party. And Gia says it's just sad that Melissa has to make up this lie to make her mum look bad. Gabriella joins them, and Teresa says she's sorry because she knows Gabriella doesn't get too involved in all the drama and stuff, but tells her that she invited Melissa to be a bridesmaid, but she said no. Gia wishes Teresa never even asked her that because of the Gorgas comments on their podcast about Joe Giudice needing someone to film with them on their spin-off while Teresa was in jail. Now, I watched that spin-off back in the day. They were barely on the show. To me, it seemed like they're the ones that needed to be on a show because The Real Housewives of New Jersey did not air until Teresa came back from jail. Iconic, by the way. An icon. So, I don't know what they're talking about. Melissa, I remember hearing a clip on Twitter. Melissa was talking on, because I don't listen to this podcast. I remember listening to a clip on Twitter about, like, Melissa was going on about, oh, you know, he needed someone to bounce off of. No, he didn't. He had the kids. You needed that check. Just be honest. Ugh. Gia tells us in her confessional that the only times they saw the Gorgas was when they were filming. Gabriella asked Teresa why Melissa even said that and what was the context, and Gia replies to look like a good aunt, while Louie says attention. Well, if it looks like a duck. Gabriella says that was a sensitive 5 years of her life, and it's hurtful that Melissa and Joe would say that, especially when it's not true. Credit shouldn't be given where it's not earned, and this is something that she just takes to heart. I don't think these girls are lying. I don't think they're lying. I think that is their experience. Call it bias, call it whatever. I just really don't believe that these girls are lying. I think Melissa and Joe are adding sauce to a lot of things. I think Melissa and Joe, in my opinion, really love the attention that they get from being on the show. And that's fine. Most people on reality TV do. But I think the damage that it's now doing and has been doing for so long to this family, I really want to know, is it worth the checks? Is it worth the attention? Because you guys don't seem happy either now. You haven't seemed happy this whole time. I mean, I just don't think they're lying. I don't think the girls are lying. And honestly, it breaks my heart that they're having to go through this, right? To watch this happen within their family, but it's on TV. You've got their aunt and uncle doing this, in my opinion, shameful podcast. They're on TV. They're, you know, in blogs, in interviews, just talking crazy, saying these things. Honestly, the Gorgas should be ashamed of themselves, in my opinion. Attention by any means? No. No. It's sick. Teresa points out that Gabriella is breaking out in hives and says Melissa is her godmother when Louie says Gorgas are lying through their teeth. Louie says the Gorgas are lying to hurt Teresa, and Teresa starts to tear up, which riles Louie up because he hates seeing what Joe is doing to her. Now, I have seen some comments, because that's the end of the scene. I've seen some comments on Twitter that, you know, a couple of people believe that the scene felt very overproduced, very scripted. But I'm sorry. I believe the girls. I know the castmates do whatever, but I believe the girls. Their conviction just felt, it just seemed more genuine to me than any scene I have ever watched with Melissa and Joe ever in the history of this show. My opinion. I don't think those girls are lying. I don't think Gabriella got hives because her mother is making her go on TV and lie. I think Gabriella got hives probably because she doesn't like the idea of being on camera anyway, because she's very rarely on. But also because she is, I think, 17. She's a 17-year-old. No, she's 17 or 18, something like that. She's a young woman, very young woman, who's experiencing stuff that she does not want to experience, and I believe her. Same with Gia. I think Gia, yes, she can get more involved. She's like 25 or something. She can get more involved and all this kind of... No, she's not 25. She has to be like 23 or something like that. She's in her 20s, early 20s. And yes, she does get involved every now and again. We had that scene last season, you know, between her and Joe. But she does always stay very calm and measured. I found out that she's, you know, she's going to be a lawyer, or she is a lawyer. I think she's graduated already. So, like, this is a smart girl. This is a girl that always kind of keeps her temper in check. She doesn't fly off the handle like Teresa and Joe. She doesn't do all this kind of stuff. But she will say her point. And I just don't believe these two girls are lying, is the short story, is the short version of what I'm saying. I don't think they're lying. So, Melissa and Joe, you should be ashamed, in my opinion. Danielle is meeting Melissa to see how Melissa does the buying for her store Envy, because Danielle wants to start her own clothing business called Bougie Kids. Now, I don't know if she was just saying that it would be for bougie kids or if it would be called Bougie Kids, but that's not important. Melissa catches Danielle up on Jackie's comments about Danielle's outfit, and Danielle says she's glad she didn't invite her then, and that Jackie was just jealous of her legs. In her confessional, Danielle says that she can call a spade, and Jackie is a judgy bee. Agreed. Danielle opens up about her relationship with her brother, how she started reviewing brands on social media during the pandemic, but her brother would constantly make fun of her, so she just blocked him. She didn't think anything of it, but apparently Danielle's brother got very upset and ended up disinviting her from his wedding like 2 years ago. Melissa's like, over Instagram? I feel like I'm missing something. And Danielle says some things came up while he was planning the wedding. She basically clashed with her brother's now wife, and she thinks the wife is the problem. Melissa, of course, says it's not always the wife because she tries to do everything to get Joe and Teresa back together. He's a grown man. She can only do that so many times. So there's clearly a lot of parallels between Danielle's and Teresa's story. It's potentially why they bonded. They both have this idea that the sister-in-law is mean and evil and has ruined the relationship with their sibling. It is interesting that Danielle still steps outside of that. She's clearly Teresa's friend, but she still was like, hey, listen, business is business. I want to learn from Melissa. Like, we're cool. We're in this circle together. I'm going to take advantage of that. And I love it. The hustler mentality is really in Danielle, it seems like. So that's good. But I do want to hear more about this brother thing, because it still doesn't, it feels like we're not getting all the details. Like Melissa said, I feel like I'm missing something, you know? I want to know more about what happened here, what were the back and forths, because it's not really that clear to me right now. At the Aidens, the kids are extorting money from their parents in exchange for doing chores. They ended up on agreeing on $14 an hour. Love that for them, because let me tell you something. Imagine me asking my mum for money to do chores. She'd be like, that's your job anyway. Imagine me asking money. Never would have happened. Jennifer tells us in her confessional that she's a sucker for her kids, and especially since the affair was revealed, because it was very hard for her children. Jen and Bill go take some time out to leave the kids with the cleaning, and Jen says it would have been easier if she just did it herself, but Bill says no, they have to learn so they can be competent. Fantastic. Love that. Great thing to say, Bill, because that's exactly what you're supposed to do as a parent. Prepare your kids to be able to live and take care of themselves. Great. Jen catches Bill up on the fight with Margaret, and Jen asks Bill if he thinks that she is self-reflective. Bill takes a little too long to answer, then says everyone's personalities are different, so at times, this is what happens. Jen is frustrated that Bill is always trying to be the peacemaker and says she doesn't need her husband to validate the other person's point of view in her confessional, as producers flash to all the times when Jen has looked for Bill to have her back in conflicts and with the other ladies, and he just hasn't. Now, I'm all for people who are, stoic, more calm, very rational like Bill is, and I agree, with him being like people's personalities are different, so these things can happen. Cool. But I definitely agree with Jen that Bill needs to back her up more from what I have seen. I believe that if you're in a partnership, you have to have your partner's back. Even if you have to go and talk to them about it later on in the house privately, in public, if your partner is having an argument, have their back. You don't have to be all rah-rah, you don't have to be all in it, but stand up for your partner. It's actually very easy to do. And I think Bill owes her that as her partner, but also as the person who had the affair that was then revealed in a fight with her husband, with his wife, that had nothing to do with the affair. Okay, so she's taking all the brunt of it. She's taking all the vitriol. She's going through all the embarrassment all over again, but now on TV as well. Bill, stick up for your wife. It also didn't really make that much sense to me that Bill kept saying that she needs to own her own part. That is true for Jen, but not in this situation talking about Margaret. What Margaret did last time was reprehensible in my opinion. And I think that Bill needs to stop saying things like that in these conversations. To me, I could be... What do you guys think? You let me know. Bill eventually does say that he thinks Jen is self-reflective, but Jen is over it at this point. Bill sighs like he knows he's in the doghouse. And you should be. You should be all up in that doghouse. Right in there. In fact, the dog should get your space. And you should be in there by yourself. Because you don't even deserve to pet the dog. In my opinion. At Danielle and Nate's, her father shows up, and Danielle tells us that she gets her personality from him, as he's the life of the party, fun, says things sometimes that you question. Her mother also arrives, and Danielle tells us that her parents separated when she was 8, and they could not get along for years until Danielle's son Dominic was born, and Danielle told them that they needed to get their act together if they wanted to be in his life. Sometimes that's really what you have to do as an adult with your parents. Grandparents love their grandbabies. They want every single moment they can with them. If you guilt them into behaving so that they can have this special time with their grandchildren, they will behave 9 times out of 10. Just saying. Danielle's daughter Valentina is performing her piece for an art show that she missed out on at school because of the pandemic for her grandparents. She looked so adorable. She is so cute. And she did all this art, and she was like referencing the reference of the artist, like she referencing the style of art. Anyway, it was cute. After her presentation, her brother Dominic gave her a bunch of flowers, and Danielle says that her children are very close and she's determined to stop them becoming like her and her brother. Now, she worryingly said if Dominic grows up to marry a megabee, she would poison her. So note to self, don't mess with Danielle. Danielle sits down with her parents and says this is the first time that she's done something for Valentina and her brother wasn't there. It turns out her dad is the only one that still has a relationship with Danielle's brother out of the family, and he starts to cry about wanting his children together. Now, her dad did seem like really, really sweet and genuinely affected by his children not getting along. He mentioned how excited Danielle was when he was born, because that's, her younger brother, and how she like ran into the room and, was just so excited. And the producers also did show a home video, like a clip from a home video as well. So it is sad. I want to know more about this. I need more detail. What happened? How can it be resolved? At the Gorgas, Melissa's mum and sister come over, and Melissa's mum is talking about the younger men that she's dating. Now, in an awkwardly produced way by the Gorgas, Melissa instantly brings up Teresa's wedding and whether her mother and sister got an invite. Do these people have any other storyline? Is there anything else happening in the Gorgas' life that doesn't have to do with, wah, Teresa is mean, wah? Is there anything else? Anything at all. I'll take anything at this point. Melissa's mum Donna says no, but she hopes that Teresa's happy and she actually likes Louie. Joe goes off talking about how unfair it is because Joe Giudice's family was invited to his and Melissa's wedding, and excuses the kids so that he can bash Teresa some more. Well, at least that's something, right? Not doing it in front of the children. On TV, where the children can see it and so can all their friends, and in podcasts and interviews that your children can hear as well as all their friends, but at least you excuse them in person. Donna says what pisses her off is how her and Teresa's father were close, and Joe talks about his dad's last words being that Joe and Teresa should just love each other. Joe says Louie hasn't done anything to help make the situation better, he's made it worse, and Melissa brings up the insecure thing. Joe says he's going to bring it up at guys' night. Again, any story, anything else, give me something that's going on in your life. Talk about Melissa's face changing. Talk about that. Talk about Joe's face changing. We see you. I've seen some... I'm not shaming. I'm just saying there are other things you could be discussing on this here television show that do not involve victimhood and Teresa Giudice. At guys' night, Frank and Joe, Margaret's husband, arrive first, and Frank jokes about Margaret dressing Joe. Joe Gorga, Evan and Bill arrive next, and the men start ordering drinks and food as newbies Nate and John arrive. The reason I'm talking about the order that they're arriving in is because Louie was left for last. I don't know if that was by producers, it probably was. Anyway. Margaret's husband Joe lets Frank know Paul isn't coming because of work, and Frank tells the men about Paul's comments about him letting Dolores do a man's job. Joe Gorga asks if Frank misses Dolores, and Frank says he misses his relationship with Dolores. Yes, when she was still acting like she was married to you, when she was super accessible to you, when she was doing everything for you, when you basically lived together. But then you could still go out here and be with a bunch of women. Of course you miss that. That's the perfect life for you, right? So Louie's name comes up as the men are eating and drinking. Again, I think this was purposeful. That's why Louie was left till last. But anyway, Margaret's husband Joe asks Joe Gorga, is Louie coming? And Joe Gorga says he doesn't know. Joe should ask Bill, his buddy. Bill says he loves Louie and he's the brother-in-law that he doesn't have. Lovely bit of shade there from Bill. Bill asks Joe Gorga to be nicer to Louie, and Joe Gorga gets on his... Gorga funny. Joe Gorga gets on his soapbox about Teresa and Louie not inviting Melissa's family to the wedding. He's calling him a piece of ish and garbage just as Louie is arriving. The men take a shot and talk about Louie's bachelor party plans. Louie thinks the guys should get together, the ladies get together, and then they all meet up at the end of the night. The rest of the men are like, no. I actually don't think this is a bad idea. They're all married. You don't want to spend the rest of the night with your wife? Like, you're going to go do your whole thing. You might see some strippers. You might throw some ones, have some drinks, do whatever it is you're doing. Are you not planning on seeing your wife at the end of the night? It's not like we're talking about single dudes here. I didn't see the issue, but fine. Joe Gorga asks Louie who he will invite, and Louie wants to know why, because obviously his tone was weird when he said that. Joe brings up the wedding invitation in a roundabout way before bringing up that Melissa's family haven't been invited. Frank asks if there's a reason why Joe's in-laws weren't invited, and Louie says it's a lot of past BS. Tappy tappy nails. Apparently, it's a slap in the face to not invite his siblings' in-laws to a wedding in Italian tradition, and Louis says there's a lot of slaps in the face going around, and brings up Melissa saying Teresa's children wouldn't have eaten if it wasn't for her and Joe on their podcast. Louis says he lives with the girls and Joe's nieces talk about it in the house, and Joe loses it, saying he doesn't know anything, he shouldn't get involved, he's not a man, blah. Louis says he can talk all he wants, and Joe punches the table, and Louis tells him to stop the theatrics. Stop the theatrics. I cannot speak today. My sincere apologies. The men end up intervening to tell Joe to listen to Louis, and Louis stayed very, very calm, which I really think helped the situation, because Joe went from aggressive to his natural victimhood state, and I think that's maybe healthier for him. Everyone is saying Joe and Teresa should sit down and talk, especially Louis, who's basically begging at this point, and Joe says he'll think about it, and that was the end of this episode. So, ratings. I gave this one a 7.5 out of 10. I did. We got some very cute scenes from Danielle and her family, Jennifer Aiden and her family, and even Rachel and her family. But I still had to knock off points for this never-ending Gorga vs. Teresa feud. I am no longer interested in this storyline. And it seems that the Gorgas don't have any other storyline to bring to this show. So at this point, I'm questioning why they're still here. Melissa and Teresa somewhat made up, and Teresa invited Melissa to be in the wedding, but Melissa said no. Gabriella and Gia made an appearance to talk about their aunt and uncle's shameful, in my opinion, podcast and dispel some of their claims that they made. We met Danielle's parents and found out about the feud with her brother, and guys' night got completely heated over the same Gorga storyline, and I'm extremely over it. I think it's time. Bravo, Andy, the producers, we need to look at this cast. You added 3 this season. You can get rid of 2. Anyway, so I gave this a 7.5 out of 10. I want to know what you gave it out of 10. I want to know your thoughts, your feedback, your comments. Please do feel free to mention them in the comments down below, or on social media at Rivetea TV, or both. Keep the conversation going. Please also give this video a like if you liked it. Please also subscribe and switch the notification bell on so that you can get notified whenever I put a new recap on. All of that YouTube stuff. But for now, I will see you next time. Bye!